Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and ClearVista Financial are not affiliated. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions.
Well, Happy New Year, Jesse. It's almost 2023, and we've had kind of a different year this year when it comes to financial programs and things. But
Yes, we
folks,
have.
I'm Certified Kingdom Advisor Mark Trice, and I want to welcome you to the Spend Life Well Show, where we apply biblical wisdom to your financial life. You just heard speaking there Jesse Hamilton, my fellow financial professional, here in the studio.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the show, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. I started to have some hats and kazoos and things, Jesse, to play, but our marketing team talent suggested that we not do that. It might send the wrong message that we're just partying all the time.
Yeah.
With that. So, hey, on today's program, Jesse, we're going to help you prepare for the new year with the top 10 financial resolutions for 2023. And we're also going to help our listeners make sense of all the market and economic predictions for 2023. This is a big one right now. Everybody's predicting. And what nobody does every year is they don't go back and say, well, what about your prediction you made last year? Because they're all wrong. They're all wrong. So
yeah, well, I want to say, like, all right, it's the 31st. It's the last day of the year. Write down all your predictions for 2023, and we'll open them up next year and see how good they are, because they're probably going to be wrong. But I don't want to get into that right now. This is the Spend Life Well Show, where you can call us anytime with your financial questions if you want. That number is 254-282-0495. You can also send a text message to that number if you feel inclined. But we love hearing from you, and we love answering your questions. If you have a question, another way to send it to us is our email, radio@spendlifewell.com. We'll try to respond either on the show or within 24 hours.
Yep. All this month, we've been talking about living and giving, but let's talk about preparing for the future. If you want to visit us and listen to a previous broadcast, you can go to spendlifewell.com, click on the link for the Spend Life Well show.
All right. Well, I have some big news, Mark.
Big news. It's an important and urgent news bulletin.
Yes, urgent news bulletin here. Many of our listeners really enjoy hearing our monthly market updates, where we have a webinar. You can join online and we talk about the state of the markets. We show different charts, but we are changing the time. So now
pay attention, listeners.
Yeah,
we're
pay
changing
attention
the time. No longer will it be on Saturday. It will be on
Thursday mornings at 10 a.m.
The first Thursday of the month. Thursday of the month, 10 a.m.
Yes. So our first one will be Thursday, January 5th. And you're not going to want to miss that, because we are planning on covering all of 2022 and talking about performance for an entire year. And we're going to look at macroeconomic indicators, throw up some charts, and we would be happy to answer any of your questions on that webinar. We'd love to see you there. You can register for that at spendlifewell.com. Click on the resources and then the events tab to register.
Yeah, or you can do spendlifewell.com/events.
Yeah.
And you'll be right there. So remember, folks, we're changing that ClearVista Financial Perspectives. That's the name of our program, of that monthly webinar, ClearVista Financial Perspectives. That's the first Thursday of each month at 10 o'clock in the morning. If you can't make it, go ahead and register, and we will send you a recording of that show so you can listen to it at your own leisure and time. So, Jesse, when I was thinking about this special program going into the new year, a lot of people may want to forget 2022 when it comes to their portfolio.
I'm sure many people do.
But we're excited about what the future holds. So, but I was thinking about scripture that could be applicable to our program today, and I was thinking about James 4:13-17. And that says, "Look here, you who say, today or tomorrow we are going to a certain town, and we will stay there a year. We will do business there and make a profit. And the response there is, how do you know that what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It's here a little while and then it's gone. What we ought to say is, if the Lord wants us to, we will live and do this or that. Otherwise, you're boasting about your own pretentious plans, and such boasting is evil. And so remember to sin to know what you ought to do and then not do it. That's from James 4. And whoa, all the predictions are rolling out now, Jesse, for 2023.
We
They've
have
been
them
coming out for weeks.
we have them across the board. I'm sure that you're out getting your mail and your neighbor has a prediction on what the market's going to do this year. And then you can click on any of the major journals or Bloomberg, any of those sources, and they're going to have predictions for the year. And so they're all here in all different capacities. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, because those predictions run the gamut. Right now, we've been kind of a more of a negative prediction for next year. One of the biggest things that analysts and economists are talking about is a recession in 2023.
That's the big word. And, as a recap, we thought we had an official one earlier this year because technically there were 2 quarters of negative GDP growth, but nobody wanted to admit that.
Well, there was an election coming up, so we can't have a recession when you're trying to get reelected.
Right.
So we'll just change the definition of elections or recession, excuse me. But it's that time of year. Christmas is coming, or Christmas is come and gone, and throughout that time, the financial world analysts are publishing their predictions, and that some of it's actually kind of interesting, right?
Very.
It's interesting, but what we found generally is that most of those predictions are absolutely off the mark. I don't want to say wrong, but I will say off the mark. Now, almost every economist last December was talking about inflation, but many of them had bought into the message or the verbiage out there from the government that it's transitory. It only lasts a little while. And what do we see in 2023 or 2022, Jesse?
It was not transitory.
No, it spiked up fast. And so, the good thing is we know that the Lord knows what's going to happen. We don't need to know what's to happen. This goes back to a conversation a couple of shows ago when we were talking about, people giving you advice and they're hooking you in with all sorts of negativity, right? So one of the things that we really try to focus on is, and we as advisors focus on, is simply respond to the data that you're presented.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to predict. Nobody has a crystal ball. So with someone saying that the price of oil is going to crash or the price of oil is going to go to $300 a barrel, it's really kind of pointless. We cannot be in the timing business trying to predict what's going to happen tomorrow. And Scripture tells us this, right?
Yeah.
It tells us don't presume on tomorrow. And so if you're listening to all the analysts out there and they're saying, well, this is going to happen or that's going to happen, take it with a grain of salt because most of them are wrong. And a lot of times, and this is the thing, Jesse, that you and I see in the financial world, is you'll get lots of research from banks, mutual fund providers that are saying that this asset class is going to take off in 2023. And guess what? They've got something that will address that issue and allow you to take advantage of it.
Right. They're selling it.
Is there a conflict of interest there?
Maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit, Jesse. I would say probably a lot of it. A lot there is for that. So some of the things, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say something very interesting that I've noticed over the past year is that even if you have the greatest data, the most comprehensive analysis of inflation and whatnot, that doesn't mean the market's going to behave in a rational way.
Right.
Because behind the market is a bunch of human beings.
That's right. And we are irrational, to use an economics term. I'm not supposed to use economic terms, but behavior of individuals is irrational.
Mm-hmm.
That's not meant to be a derogatory term, just means that we are not predictable.
Right.
And so I was looking at some research here because a lot of the things that people track is they track the earnings of the S&P 500 companies, right?
Right. We've looked
And
at that before.
yep, and strategists at the beginning of last year were predicting that earnings for 2022 would be up about 10% versus the previous year. And despite all the high volatility, actual earnings will likely only be slightly below the start of the year forecast, which is kind of interesting. But that doesn't translate to what happens in the stock markets. Knowing what's going to happen in a company's earnings does not mean that the price of that particular stock is going to move in that direction as well. There was some research done by Aneet Chakra of Janus Henderson. Now that that's a fun company. We're not promoting them, but anyway, but they did some research here. And what he was showing is they mapped the change in earnings each calendar year with the change in the price of the index. And what they found is that there's almost no correlation whatsoever between earnings and the price of the stock.
Right. For those statistical minded people out there, R squared was 0.02.
Okay, we just lost everybody, Jesse. We were talking about R squared and standard deviations, everything. So it just means it's like, well, how do you value the S&P 500? Well, you've got to look at the price movements, and the only way to look at price movements is to study it every day. We do that. We study that every day, and so there's some messages here that maybe I would look at. Don't rely on the strategists. You should look at what the company is forecasting as their corporate earnings. You don't have to follow them, but they'll tell you, is that following through in each quarter? But you cannot predict what the future is on an index or anything like that. And right now, uncertainty is what's driving volatility. Uncertainty is greater than any time since the worst of the great financial crisis.
Right.
And so we don't, a lot of people are negative in the stock market. And so we have to be careful for that. I think one thing that I'm going to put myself on, and you can hold me to it, Jesse, next year, this time next year, is I think we're going to have at least a mild recession in 2023 because you're starting to see all the warning signs when companies in the third quarter announce their profitability and
we've been watching the yield curve invert for how many months now?
Yeah, it's been at least a month and a half now that the short-term part of the yield curve was higher than the long-term part of the yield curve. That traditionally has been a big indicator of a coming recession. So I think that's going to create some more market weakness. That doesn't mean that the markets won't go up. It just means that the market's going to be facing headwinds.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's important to realize there, because a lot of times, we're looking at these things. And anyway, I just wanted people to realize that there's going to be lots of financial advice out there, right? Are you getting your advice from the television, Jesse, or Facebook or things like that?
Well, I sure do get a lot of opinions that way, but no, there's only one place that I get my advice from.
You were not around during this time, but I was old enough to know that when the nightly news came on, that what was going on, and there was a story that I was reading. I didn't realize that this happened. Back during the Iranian hostage crisis. This was back in 1979. Ted Koppel. You know who Ted Koppel is?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. So all the rest of the listeners are kind of chuckling right now because we all know who Ted Koppel is. He began covering that Iran hostage crisis. And every night he would give some update. It went on for 435 days, something like that, until those hostages were released. This is when Iranian militants stormed the U.S. Embassy and took 52 Americans captive in late 1979. And, eventually that monthly update became ABC's Nightline television program. I think you probably heard of Nightline.
Yeah.
If they still have it on. And Ted Koppel hosted that until 2005. A lot of us, when there's a crisis going on, we will turn on the television to find out what we need to do with our investments, right? But, you heard the old adage of if it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
They're going to talk about the things that are most likely to scare us, to keep us tuned in. And we've been going through some tough financial markets. So a lot of the reporting out there is about how bad it is. And in this modern 24/7 financial mediascape, if you will, you have to approach that news with some level of skepticism, right? How do we tune out all the noise? How do we tune out all the noise? And if you really want to tune out the noise, you read your Bible every day, because you realize that, okay, this may sound like it's a big deal, but all in all, I know that the Lord has plans for me. The Lord has given me advice on how to find out, and there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, Mark, I've been learning that in my study. You read the Gospels and the stories of Jesus, and you're like, wait a second, this was 2,000 years ago, but there's political unrest. There's social groups that don't get along. There's money and taxes that don't get traded fairly. It's all the same things.
Yeah. I mean, and who would watch a television show that was about trees growing, which is really what investing is kind of about. It's about watching your trees grow, right? It would not be very exciting, and you'd change the channel. So we just want to give that perspective when it comes to predictions for 2023. Folks, you've been listening to the Spend Life Well show. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
All right, well, welcome back to the Spend Life Well show. I'm Jesse Hamilton, and I'm joined, as always, by Mark Trice.
Happy New Year, Jesse.
Yeah, Happy New Year, Mark. We're having a special conversation here relating to the new year about everybody has a prediction for next year, and specifically everybody who thinks they know the markets has a prediction on what's going to happen in the markets next year. But the reality is that nobody knows other than God. So that being said,
sorry to disappoint you, folks. If you were looking for the magic investment for 2023,
yeah, we don't have it, unfortunately.
We encourage you to seek advice from a Christian financial advisor who's not going to just tell you to pray, which we tell you to pray. It would be pray and let's make up a plan for the roadmap for your goals.
Mm-hmm.
And they can help you that way and help guide you through these situations. But, what are you who are you paying attention to and why? How do you get it out of this cycle of endless news consumption? Jess, we've got some folks that we've known in the past that are no longer clients, but they would call every time there was a little bit of a volatile day in the market. They would call and want to know what's going on with their portfolio, or they were really worried. That they're losing all their money. And what we found out with this particular person was that they were actually sitting in their lazy boy watching MSNBC. And all these financial news channels are doing is trying to sell you stuff or trying to raise your blood pressure so that you will listen to their program. So, folks, just tune it out. Tune it out. And the end of the year is a great time to have a new resolution about that, and just tune out the noise. Tune out the noise.
Where's the place that they can maybe find a resource to get an actual person, not a news source, if they want to talk about it?
Hey, the best place to go is kingdomadvisors.com and click on find a certified Kingdom advisor. You can also go to moneywise.org, although next week moneywise.org is going to be called FaithFi. They're changing their name to Faith and Finances.
Okay.
So you should look for those resources, but MoneyWise, you should be able to, .org is a good place to find a link to finding a certified Kingdom advisor. So that's a good place to start there. Let's tune out the noise in 2023. So Jesse, let's take a few questions. I did want to read one scripture because I found it in the Psalms during the break. It was Psalms 31:15. And this is a good reminder to everyone, where the psalmist was saying, "My future is in your hands. Rescue me from those who hunt me down relentlessly." And in the media out there trying to get you to pay attention, they're hunting you down because they want your ears, they want your money, and they want your financial future. Don't give in to it. Just listen, get advice from a trusted advisor, and you will have a great 2023. So,
Yes.
Jesse, do we have some questions from listeners this week?
Yes, we have a couple great questions. This one came in actually over a week ago, but it was so good I wanted to bring it up again. Um, on this show, as well as MoneyWise and other similar shows, we've brought up the idea of faith-based investments. So these are companies that are providing funds that screen for biblical values, so that you can actually invest in the things that where your values are. But this person asked, does owning faith-based investments mean sacrificing returns? Is it better for me to own non-faith-based funds and hope for better performance?
Well, listener, I would ask the question: what do you believe in? Is it performance? I'm going to answer the question about performance here, but do you live a life of faith and live out your beliefs as a Christ follower in everything that you do? I don't quite understand why so many people live out their life as a Christ follower of Christ in some areas, but not all areas.
Right.
Jesus commands us. He talked about this in several of his parables. Are we going to serve, both money and God?
Yeah.
And he tells us you can't, right? You can't do both.
Yeah, it's one or the other. You can hate one and love the other. That's what he says.
So when you're thinking about investing with your values, that investing that with something that aligns with your values, you have to ask yourself, what are those values? This is what I believe as a Christian. This is what I believe. To me, I think if I'm asking that question, it's a good question, because that's telling me that this listener is really struggling, because I sense that their values are saying, I need to be looking at faith-based or biblically responsible investments. And I think that's a good question. I wish I had their name. That's a good question. But what we found over the years, you do have to look at performance and see if things are there. But what we found is that in many cases, there's not a big difference between these faith-based funds and I say a typical non-biblically responsible mutual fund.
Yeah.
So you have to look at that, and we can show you those performance figures and things, and just share with you. Everyone's fund is going to vary in performance year in, year out. But I want you to encourage you, as you're looking at those values-based investments and looking at biblically responsible investments, that you put your values first versus performance. As they all say, I mean, everybody, if you can't pick a mutual fund or an investment based on its past performance. That's why they always say at the end of those commercials, Jesse, past performance is not going to be indicative of future results. Your investments may lose value.
That's like almost you've said that before. You said it so fast.
Yeah. I practice it because it's like they go so fast you can't hear. It's like the old, you don't remember this, but there's an old commercial for FedEx, right? This is not FedEx the investments, there's just FedEx the company. And they were talking about how fast the delivery service was with the FedEx. And so they hired this guy who was a really fast talker. And he did several commercials in those following years and stuff for many different companies and stuff. And he just talk real fast and give you all this information in just a few seconds. So it just reminds us, some of the spots that we do for this show, we have to give the disclosures and things on that, but they're sped up just a little bit. So it's no way I could talk that fast, but you can hear it and understand it. So it's one of those things, past performance does not indicate future results.
Well,
We
Mark,
can't, predict the future just based on performance.
I guess I have a follow-up question, because I won't name it by name, but let's just say there's a huge streaming company that we've all heard of and we probably subscribe to, and they're putting out movies that maybe have some questionable content. You don't want kids watching it, or it doesn't align with what the Bible says, but they're going to make so much money because people watch it. How do you go about not having that in your portfolio?
Well, that's where you have to ask what your values are, and where and are the things that I'm investing it with aligning with that Christian value.
Hmm.
And not everybody has that same conviction.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to think if you're not, you know, investing in biblically responsible investments that you're a bad person. Not at all.
Yeah.
But we get a lot of questions. People are curious about it. They want to really live their faith throughout their lives, and that includes their investments. And so biblically responsible investments are really an avenue for people to express their faith through their pocketbook, and how they invest, and you know, be able to give generously
Yeah.
and do all those things. So that's the most important for our listener that asked that question. That's the most important question is, do I want my investments to align with my values? And if I do, the number one reason should be not necessarily performance. That should be secondary, but the number one reason is, how do I find investments that align with my values?
Right.
And a certified Kingdom advisor can help you assess and try to understand what your options are out there.
Yeah.
And so you can do that. We have a whole list of biblically responsible investments that we can refer you to, or if you want an advisor to help you construct a portfolio that's in line with your risk tolerance and objectives and things, we can help you do that. Or you can simply just go to kingdomadvisors.com, click on find a CKA, which stands for Certified Kingdom Advisor, and
Yeah.
those folks will really help you put that together, that type of portfolio.
Yeah.
Let's take
All right.
another question.
Yeah, we'll
Jesse.
take one more. We got this question a little while ago, and it actually applies to what you were just saying. So, for those of you that are not familiar, if you work with a traditional financial advisor, they're going to present you with a maybe a printout that has a risk tolerance questionnaire on it. But the question is, other than my age, what are the other factors determining my risk tolerance?
Okay, that's a great question. Other than your age, what are the other factors determining my risk tolerance? Well, we always sometimes ask, what's your investment horizon? Because just because you may be 50 years old, your objective for that particular investment may be different than, say, a retirement age.
Hmm.
Maybe it's to provide college for your grandchild, and saving up for that. Well, that investment horizon is different. So, age, investment horizon, how far out in advance will I need this investment for something? And it could
Yeah.
be, I don't ever need this. I want to use it for kingdom purposes. And so I want to be able to leave that as part of my estate to my church or whatever. Uh, those are important factors. And what type of volatility can you handle? What type of volatility can you handle? This has come into play a lot this year
Yes.
with the markets being down so much. A lot of folks that have talked to really needed to reevaluate how much downside risk they were willing to accept. Because when the market's going up, oh yeah, I'm an aggressive investor. And when the market's going down, their story changes, their preferences change, and rightly so. I'm not knocking that at all, but that risk profile is very important. How much volatility are you willing to experience? And could you potentially lose 10, 20, 50% of your portfolio? Are you willing to accept that risk? So besides age, it's your time investment horizon, it's your risk profile, if you will, your tolerance for risk. Those are all the other factors there. And ultimately, what's the objective? What's this for? And that's a great question. I think that's a good one.
There's a lot of really cool tools out there now. So ask your advisor if they have access to any of these tools that kind of explain your risk.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be real helpful. We use a number of different tools out there. I don't think, Jesse, we've got that on our website yet where people can do that, but you can check in from time to time at spendlifewell.com and see if we've got that up there.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesse, we've got a few minutes left in this segment here. I want to jump into kind of the top 10 financial resolutions for 2023. And we're going to spend the remaining part of the show talking about this because we all, do you make New Year's resolutions, Jesse? Is that
Yeah.
something you do?
Yes, I do.
Have you made yours for this year? Have you already figured them out and decided
You
what you're going
know,
to do?
I am a little behind on that. I need to get some time down with my wife and really talk about them, how they're going to be between the two of us.
What the number one financial resolution for not financial, but number one financial resolution for most people?
Does it have to do with debt, maybe?
No, that's number two.
Okay.
Be more healthy. Be healthy. Right. Lose weight.
Oh, yeah,
Exercise
yeah,
more.
yeah. I thought you
And
meant
then
only within finances.
Debt. Eliminating debt or paying down debt was another
Yeah, yeah.
big one there. So um, we'll talk more about that when we come back. But as 2022 is winding down, I'm hopeful that you'll reflect on this past year and pray about what God has in store for you for 2023. Folks, you've been listening to the Spend Life Well show. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back and we'll continue on with our discussion about top 10 financial resolutions for 2023. Thanks for listening in. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Certified Kingdom Advisor Mark Trice. You've been listening to the Spend Life Well show. I'm here today with Jesse Hamilton in the studio.
Hello.
And we've, in preparation for the new year, it's New Year's Eve. Happy New Year to all our listeners out there. We've been talking about financial resolutions for 2023. And Karen Bennett, this was on Bankrate.com. Karen Bennett was talking about some of the top 10 financial resolutions for 2023. And, this has been a kind of a tough year, Jesse, for a lot of folks. And inflation's at a 40-year high.
Yeah.
A lot of people ran through their savings. What are the top things that people are thinking about when it comes to financial resolutions?
Well, yeah, we talked about several different things. We're going to mention 10 of them today. We mentioned debt, Mark, as the
Yeah.
first major thing that people were thinking about. So what kind of debt are people carrying?
Well, we've seen a rise in credit card debt over the last 6 months of this year, of 2022.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York said there was about a $38 billion increase since the second quarter in credit card debt. And that's about a 15% year over year rise in credit card debt. That's about Americans carrying about $925 billion in credit card debt. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
So the one of the financial resolutions is simply to consolidate credit card debt. I would say come up with a plan to pay down that debt. When you think about that, Dave Ramsey talks about the debt snowball. We have a similar methodology that we talk about, but I would prioritize your debts from the largest balance to the smallest balance to the largest balance. I'm not so concerned about the interest rate because I'm more concerned about, Jesse, about you attacking the problem.
Okay.
If we micromanage or try to get into the minutia of the details, well, this one's 21.99 and this one's 21.6, I'm going to pay off the high. It doesn't matter. Just start paying it down. Start with the smallest bill and pay that in full as quickly as possible. Then take all that money that you were putting towards card number one, making sure that you've been making at least the minimum payments on the other cards, and apply that to the second largest card. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're struggling and you just can't seem to make payments, we encourage you to get some type of credit counseling. I know you can go to moneywise.org and get some resources there for credit counseling. There's a number of different things there. Be careful with those things because you want to make sure, like something like Christian credit counselors organizations, to make sure that they approach debt from a biblical worldview. So
Right.
the second thing, Jesse, what was the second thing we were going to get into?
Well, a lot of people don't like hearing the word budget.
Yeah, it's a
So
nasty word, right?
yeah, we deal with that sometimes. People don't like that word. So, we can also call it a spending plan. And that's kind of changing the perspective on moving from what you can't buy to choosing what you do buy.
Yeah, because if the times that I've had to have a budget, Jesse, I blow the budget out of the water about within 1 week, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And and it seems to be a lot harder. But if at the beginning of the month we decide, my wife and I decide this is where we're going to spend the resources that God has given us, and we pray about that. Lord, where do you need to spend this money this month? And there's always more choices than there is money. And does it seem like
Hmm.
that for you?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so it is a little bit of a semantics, right? It's a budget, and it seems so constrictive. It's a bad word, but a spending plan. I like to spend. I like to spend. So this is where my spouse and I are choosing what we're going to spend our money on. First of the list, on the top of the list, can you guess it, Jesse? Is what?
Giving.
Giving. Yes, that's the most important. We must be thankful and appreciative to the Lord. God doesn't need your money, but as an act of worship, or for some of you, maybe it's just you're getting started with giving, and it's just basically you're trying to be obedient to what you feel God leading you to do.
Hmm.
But to me and our family, it's an act of worship. So top of the line before anything else is giving. Otherwise, we'll decide to give with whatever's left over. And I can tell you many times when we had a budget, Jesse, versus a spending plan. Well, we often didn't have money left over to give, and so I think that's very important. So giving is at the top. The spending plan is you can choose what you spend your money on instead of restricting yourself on what you can't spend. So how should people really think about developing a spending plan?
Well, there's lots of different tools. We would love to get into actual details of those, but as a rule of thumb, start with your necessaries expenses like your housing, your utilities, your groceries, and your savings. Those are all things that you need to make it through the day and through the week. So identifying how much you need for those can create availability for remaining funds to go towards other things.
Yeah, and that's there's also some great apps out there too.
Yeah, there
The
are.
one I like is MoneyWise. Now you can go to moneywise.org. Now remember, next week they're changing their name. That's going to be Faith Fi. Faith, the word faith, FI for finance, faith and finance. They have a tool that you can subscribe to. There is a free version, but I encourage you to look at some of the app from MoneyWise can help you kind of
Hmm.
categorize those expenses and doing that. So I know we talk when we counsel families, Jesse, we talk about giving first, and then second, which is the third New Year's resolution on this list here in this bankrate.com article, is prioritizing saving. We think it's the second most important thing that you do. Giving, saving, spending. And we encourage you to prioritize savings. If you do it up front, it's more likely to happen, right?
Right.
Yeah, so give first, save second, fund your lifestyle third. And if you need to, use debt very prudently to fund your lifestyle. So, a lot of employers, Jesse, have easy ways for us to save. You want to talk about some of those things, workplace plans and things?
Yeah, sure. Well, we're going to get later into boosting your retirement savings, but a lot of companies provide specific resources for you. So, if you work for a large company with lots of resources, you should dig into figuring out what those are.
Yeah, and a lot of banks are starting to raise their interest rates. They're paying for deposits or
Hmm.
maybe certificates of deposit. You can go bankrate.com is a good one. You can search for national banks and local banks in your area and see what their rates are for a savings account, a CD, and find and shop around for the best rates.
Yeah, I
So
was reading an article the other day about how much money Americans are losing by not being in a high interest savings account. All you have to do is change the money into that account. It's still liquid and available, but it pays so much higher of a rate. The
Yeah.
number was, north of $70 billion.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot of money that's not earning anything. We might as well just stuff it in our mattress if we're going to do that. So, what's the fourth New Year's resolution, financial New Year's resolution, Jesse?
This is great. This is the basis of financial security right here, but starting an emergency fund. So we have lots of opinions on what an appropriate emergency fund might be for you, but a Bankrate survey recently showed that more than half of Americans have less than 3 months expenses saved in an emergency fund.
Yeah, and that's to us, that's the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bare minimum. Now, if you're trying to get out of debt, you may hear things that say start with $1,000 and then pay off your debts and then save up more. But if you're able and you don't have a lot of debt, we would encourage at least 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses in a very liquid cash savings type account.
Yes.
So look for those high yield savings accounts are good places to park that money.
If you're starting at level 0 at the ground, $1,000 is a great first benchmark to reach. If you're really struggling to save up that emergency fund, that's a great place to set as a goal if you're starting at 0.
And that could be the first thing you do in 2023. Set aside that $1,000 or so for emergency expenses, and it's for emergencies, right?
Right. It's not I feel like spending it.
Right. A new TV to watch the Super Bowl is not an emergency. All right. So many times we have emergencies, Jesse, that really aren't emergencies. So be serious in 2023 about emergencies.
Right. So that goes into our next one, though, Mark, which is number 5, is to boost your retirement savings.
Okay. You said we were going to talk about it.
Yeah, we are going to talk about it. What I think we're trying to say here is really understand what's available to you. If you work somewhere that has a 401k, figure out how to maximize those contributions so that you're getting the most match. If you're confused about that, we would love to help you with that. If you don't work somewhere with a 401k, there's lots of other great ways to save for retirement. What are some of those?
Well, you can set up an individual retirement account or a Roth IRA account to set aside savings. You need to have earned income, in other words, a job that pays with a paycheck.
Yeah.
And you can do those things there to help you invest. Now, one of the big things, Jesse, is I was getting ahead of myself here, but one of the big things is that the limits for those types of retirement accounts, both the 401ks and the IRAs, are going up in 2023. So if you've been the type that's been maxing out your 401k, you need to make sure you adjust the monthly contribution to those things to make sure you're still maxing that out. And that brings us to the 6th financial resolution for 2023. Learn better investing habits. So
this is a really important one. We really try to stress education here with what we do. But if you're confused about something, just start researching it, start learning about it. Even down to vocabulary, learning what an index fund is, what's a bond, what's a mutual fund, what's an ETF. These are all things that are great.
There's so many resources out there that you can just educate yourself a little bit. There's resources on our website, spendlifewell.com, or articles, and you can just read our blog posts. You can get some updates on certain things and just take the few minutes every day or every week to learn more about money.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's great to there are all sorts of Bible studies out there, like the Bible app. And if you just type in finance or money, man, there's so many different Bible studies that pop up that will walk you through different things and just learn what God has to say about your finances this coming year. So one of the things that's really changing, Jesse, is you should not only just put money in tax deferred accounts like IRAs and 401ks, but do some taxable accounts as well. Diversify the types of investment accounts that you have.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the big things is the maximum contribution limits in 2023 for an IRA, if you're under the age of 50, is going up. It's going up to $6,500 a year for a traditional IRA and $22,500 for a 401k. Now, that doesn't include the catch-up contributions that you can do as an investor if you are over the age of 50.
Right.
Talk to your financial advisor. Go locate a certified Kingdom advisor on our website or kingdomadvisors.com. They'll be able to give you good advice as that. So let's jump on here. Number 7, improve your credit score.
Yeah, there's 4 things here. These 4 tips on how to increase your credit score. So just as perspective, FICO uses the scoring system, and a good credit score by them would be considered 670 to 739. That's considered, quote, good. But here are 4 tips on how to increase that. One is to pay your bills on time and in full.
Yep.
You can, number 2, lower your credit utilization ratio. So,
And that means, Jesse, what? That has to do with the available credit versus the balance that you are using on that.
correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Keep that low, below a third of the available card balance, and that will help improve your credit score.
It will. So also, if you don't apply for new accounts too often, so that's not to say don't open a new account, but don't go opening up a new account at a very often rate. And then number 4 is consider meeting with a financial advisor or an expert at your local bank to assess your financial situation. And I think it's funny that they say your local bank. There's lots of other resources besides your local bank.
Right,
But
right.
these are all different ways to improve your
This is a
score.
website that promotes banks.
Right. They want you to go to the bank.
Surprise. So I know if Dave Ramsey is listening to our program, he is rolling over in his grave because or not his grave. He's yelling at the radio because, your credit score is an I love debt score, as he says. And we
Yes.
realize that. But there's also that can save you money by having a good credit score. What's number 8 on our list of financial resolutions?
Here's a good one we can all do. Cook more meals at home.
You mean it's cheaper to cook at home than it is to eat out all the time?
Yes, even if you're
Oh, yeah.
making up meals from scratch, it's cheaper.
Okay. What about number 9?
The next one is update your beneficiaries.
Oh, you
So,
would not believe the problems that it created by not checking that your beneficiaries are the way that you want them. I wish I had
yes,
time for a story. Maybe we'll do it in another show. But that's always a good one. Make sure that they're correct. If someone's fallen out of your will or out of your favor, you make sure you change the beneficiary.
mhm.
And then finally, number 10 for financial resolutions in 2023 is look for ways to make money.
Yeah,
We always talk about the side hustles, right? There's a whole list out there of side jobs that you can do to make a little extra cash. So, Jesse, folks, we're coming up. This is the end of the 2022. We wish you all a very fruitful and blessed 2023. We want to thank you for listening to our program every week. The Spend Life Well show, I hope, has been meaningful in your life. And we wish you the best and Happy New Year from all of us at the Spend Life Well show. Have a great one.